So, continuing this feminist video series, I thought I'd do my next video on objectification. This ties into the previous video on rape culture, but it's a big enough topic in its own right that I thought was worth discussing. So, I used to be confused about the subject of objectification. People would complain about, photos in magazines of women in bikinis, being objectifying, and I had the usual kind of libertarian response. Well, they chose to do it, but I've come to understand objectification a little bit more. It's not an attack on sexuality, um, but it is, the idea that women are reduced to sexual objects for men. Um, and it actually extends beyond just sexual objectification. There's different kinds of objectification, which I'll get into in a minute. Um, so the idea is that it turns women into props in men's lives. If you ever see, some rock or hip hop video where, or any kind of ad where a guy is just kind of surrounded by skimpy dressed women, who are sort of there to make him look cool. They're decorations essentially. They're not people with their own inner lives and such. I think to really understand objectification, it's best not to look at the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition or something like that. I think the best place to look is actually some place where some context where a woman's looks should be irrelevant, but are still brought into the equation. Like when Elena Kagan was being nominated for the Supreme Court, there were a lot of comments about her looks. That she was ugly, that she was too butch. Why can't she find a man? Like, what does any of that have to do with her qualifications for the Supreme Court? And similarly, there was an instance where Obama commented on the looks of a female governor, saying that she was like the hottest governor in the country, and he later had to apologize for it. And a lot of people were like, well, why should he? Well, a lot of guys had this concept. Well, I'm just paying her a compliment, right? Yes, women get comments on their looks a lot, whether it's positive or negative comments. It's always they're judged according to their looks, and not seen in terms of other capacities they have. And so, it doesn't matter if she's an attorney, an astronaut, politician, what have you. They're always it's always just first and foremost on their looks, and that's what objectification is. It's not. I mean, I think I read a recent an interesting article recently talking about how to tell if a photo is objectifying or not. I'll post it below. I'm not necessarily in entire agreement with that. I think some of the things that points out are good general rules of thumb, but it's to say whether a particular photo is or is not objectifying, I think is less useful than understanding that objectification as a sort of systemic thing. There's this idea called the male gaze, which is that women are seen as sort of as playing a supporting role to a man's own life. That and that doesn't just limit itself to being turned into sexual objects for men's pleasure. There's also like in the feminist frequency did that video on the manic pixie dream girl trope, which in which a woman is a kind of muse for the man. She's there to get him to lighten up. But the point is that it's always what the woman is doing for the man. And it's the same thing with the damsel in distress trope that she talked about, which caused such an uproar. The idea that a woman is, there to sort of advance the plot of the male protagonist. That's the thing we see in media, and it's plays into a sort of countercultural assumption that women are valued not for what they are in themselves, but for what they are to men. What sort of supporting role they can play to men, whether it's as objects of sexual gratification or of poetic inspiration, whatever. It's always them as props, essentially. And Yeah, like I should mention that while I'm trying to keep this discussion mainly on feminism, there are other forms of objectification other than objectification of women. I think there's class-based objectification, like when someone treats some service worker rudely because they're just here to get me my coffee. You're treating them as a means to an end. They're not people and subjects unto themselves. They're objects for your own use. And I think there's also racial objectification. Like I think there have been a couple occasions where Dave Chappelle was doing a stand up and people kept yelling out lines from the show and wanting them to basically be their like one trick pony or whatever, and I feel like I think and a lot of those tropes were like in the context in which he made those jokes, they were and they actually featured a kind of critique of racism, but taken in themselves in isolation, the way that the crowd wanted them to do it, they basically become just racist tropes essentially. So I think there's the way in which we objectify all kinds of groups that are sort of seen as other, and women are the biggest other for men because they're the one group, they're the one marginalized group that is actually numerically a majority, and they've throughout the world have had their existence defined in relation to men, and that's essentially what objectification consists of. So I hope that made sense. Peace.